Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Hamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotarashata Shri Srimad Istavanga Shila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. Toute gloire aux dévots assemblés. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru. Shri Gauranga. Glories to Shri Prabhupada. Merci. Okay, so we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam this morning, and I'll just start with the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Okay, so this morning we're reading from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, entitled The Atrocities of King Kamsa. And today we're on verses 28 and 29. So 28 does not have a purport, so we'll be reading both. And I'll go ahead and read text, the Sanskrit verse 28 on my own, and then for those of you who pull up verse 29 on your phones, we can sing that together. So verse 28 is Shri Shuka Uvacha Kamsa Evam Prasannabhyam Vishuddham Pratibhashitaha Devaki Vasudevabhyam Anugyato Vishadgriham. And now, text 29. Please feel free to repeat after me. Tasyam Ratriam Vyatitayam Tasyam Ratriam Vyatitayam Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina Tevya Achashta Tatsarvam Tevya Achashta Tatsarvam Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya Tasyam Ratriam Vyatitayam Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina Tevya Achashta Tatsarvam Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya. Please go ahead and recite.
Tasyam Ratriyam Vyatitayam
Tasyam Ratriyam Vyatitayam
Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina
Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina
Tivyachashta Tatsarvam
Tevya Achashta Tatsarvam
Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya
Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya.
Tasyam Ratriyam Vyatityam
Tasyam Ratriyam Vyatitayam
Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina
Kamsa Ahuya Mantrina
Tevya Achashta Tatsarvam
Tevya Achashta Tatsarvam
Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya.
Yaduktam Yoga Nidraya. Matajis? tasyam ratriyam vyatitayam kamsa ahuya mantrinaha tebya achashta tatsarvam yaduktam yoga nidraya. Okay, we'll go ahead and do the word-for-word translation. Tasyam, that. Ratriyam, night. Vyatitayam, having passed. Kamsaha, King Kamsa. Ahuya, calling for. Mantrinaha, all the ministers. Tebyaha, them. Achashta, informed. Tat, that. Sarvam, all. Yat uktam, which was spoken, that Kamsa's murderer was already somewhere else. Yoga Nidraya, by Yoga Maya, the goddess Durga. Okay, translation to verses 28 and 29 together. Shukadev Goswami continued, thus having been addressed in purity by Devaki and Vasudev, who were very much appeased, Kamsa felt pleased, and with their permission, he entered his home. After that night passed, Kamsa summoned his ministers and informed them of all that had been spoken by Yogamaya, who had revealed that he who was to slay Kamsa had already been born somewhere else. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. The Vedic scripture Chandi describes Maya, the energy of the Supreme Lord, as Nidra. Durga Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Nidra Rupena Samastitaha. The energy of Yogamaya and Mahamaya keeps the living entities sleeping in this material world in the great darkness of ignorance. Yogamaya, the goddess Durga, kept Kamsa in darkness about Krishna's birth and misled him to believe that his enemy Krishna had been born elsewhere. Krishna was born the son of Devaki, but according to the Lord's original plan, as prophecy to Brahma, he went to Vrindavan to give pleasure to Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj and other intimate friends and devotees for 11 years. Then he would return to kill Kamsa. Because Kamsa did not know this, he believed Yogamaya's statement that Krishna was born elsewhere, not of Devaki. Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Aschatya Desha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you for kindly allowing me into this assembly and giving me the chance to purify my own heart and mind by participating in this recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam and discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Please kindly offer me your blessings, all the assembled Vaishnavas, that I can say something that is beneficial to all of us and faithful to the line of spiritual masters who have, through whom this knowledge has descended. So, at this part in the Lord's pastimes, Kamsa has just released Devaki and Vasudeva, and so he felt some sense of remorse for what he had done, and we hear in this verse and purport that Prabhupada speaks about Yogamaya in this purport. And one thing that might be interesting or even a little bit surprising to hear is that Prabhupada is attributing to Yogamaya as well as Mahamaya this power of keeping the living entities in the material world asleep in the darkness of ignorance. And this could be a little bit puzzling because normally whenever we hear about Yogamaya and the Mahamaya, I will. I'll speak clearly and slowly. I'll try to enunciate. Mice's English is getting quite good now. Give him a test. So normally when we hear about Yogamaya and Mahamaya, we hear that Yogamaya, well, let's start with Mahamaya. Mahamaya is the energy which bewilders all of the conditioned souls in the material world who are trying to, they've identified with their material bodies by the force of that Yogamaya, and they're under the influence of the false ego, the false conception of self. They're thinking, I will be happy if I can bring pleasure to these material senses of my body. And so this is the endeavor that under the illusion of Mahamaya they're pursuing, and Mahamaya facilitates their illusion in this way, whereas Yogamaya, we generally hear about her in relation to the spiritual world or the Lord's spiritual pastimes, his relationships with his devotees, how Srila Prabhupada enlightens us how even God has a mother. But we think, how can God have a mother? He's the original cause of all causes. He's the person he's the source of all living entities. Generally a mother or a father is the source of their child. So how can this be? So from a perspective of, a purely scientific perspective, we know that Krishna is the cause of all causes. He's the father and the mother of everyone and everything. Yet, in the mood of loving relationships, Krishna accepts somebody to be his father and mother and plays as though he has come from that person and is completely dependent on his mother and father. And Srila Prabhupada tells us that, or through the Srimad Bhagavatam, that actually Krishna is more pleased to hear even the chastising words of his mother and his father than to hear the hymns of the Vedas being expertly recited by learned brahmanas. In the material world, we appreciate various kinds of relationships, and the motherly and fatherly relationship with the child is one of those relationships. If Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were not able to experience the relish that is found in that kind of relationship, then we would actually be more complete than he is, in a sense. He would be incomplete. He wouldn't be supreme. We'd have access to an experience that God doesn't have access to. But actually, we learn that Krishna, he also, actually his relationship with his parents is the origin of such paternal or maternal exchanges. And but it's it's a little difficult to treat God as your dependent child if you're constantly aware that he's God, that he's the supreme source of the whole creation, all the spiritual and material worlds. One is inclined to just offer obeisances millions and millions of times when one realizes the greatness and the glory of God. So this is one of the roles that the spiritual Yogamaya potency plays, that it allows Krishna's mother, such as Yashoda or Devaki, to feel that, to forget about this greatness of God, maybe even forget altogether that Krishna is God, and to just feel that Krishna is my child, he depends on me, I must take care of him. So this is generally how we hear the difference between Yogamaya and Mahamaya. So how is it that here, Prabhupada is saying, that even Yogamaya is putting the conditioned souls into ignorance and sleep? We thought they were different, that they had two different roles. So what exactly is the deal with this? So I thought we would take a little journey through a few different quotes from Srila Prabhupada, where he explains Yogamaya and Mahamaya. And let's see if, by hearing these explanations, we can come to a better understanding of how we can harmonize this apparent contradiction in this purport, at least from what we normally hear about Yogamaya and Mahamaya. So let's start from. So we hope to answer a few different questions, like, are Yogamaya and Mahamaya, are they different? Are they the same energy? And where does Durga fit into this? Because here Prabhupada also said, that Yogamaya is the goddess Durga. And normally we hear that goddess Durga is, with her three-pronged trident, is in charge of distributing various kinds of sufferings to the living entities in the material world according to their karma. And she is essentially Mahamaya, and that this material world is known as Devi Dham, the abode of goddess Durga, where she's bewildering the living entities. So how is she being equated with Yogamaya? So we hope that we can get some understanding, thanks to Srila Prabhupada, through a few explanations that we'll hear from him. So I want to start with a few excerpts that are kind of in line with this idea that, Mahamaya is the material world, Yogamaya is the spiritual world. This is what we generally hear. So let's hear what Srila Prabhupada says about this. So here is an excerpt from a purport in the 10th canto, where Yashoda Mai has just seen the universal form of Krishna, and she's almost about to become aware that, whoa, this maybe isn't just my son, maybe this is God or something. Srila Prabhupada says, although Mother Yashoda understood the whole philosophy of life, at the next moment she was overwhelmed by affection for her son by the influence of, what do you think, is it Mahamaya or Yogamaya? Yogamaya. By the influence of Yogamaya. Unless she took care of her son Krishna, she thought, how could he be protected? She could not think otherwise, and thus she forgot all her philosophical speculations. This forgetfulness is described by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as being inspired by the influence of Yogamaya. Mohana sadharmyan mayam. Materialistic persons are captivated by Mahamaya, whereas devotees, by the arrangement of the spiritual energy, are captivated by Yogamaya. So you see, we're putting them in two different corners here. It sounds like they're in two different corners here in this purport. Okay, and the next excerpt is from Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada says, in the spiritual world, there is another energy, the superior spiritual energy, or internal energy, which acts under the direction of Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya is the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. She also works under the Lord's direction, but she works in the spiritual world. When the living entity puts himself under the direction of Yoga Maya instead of Mahamaya, he gradually becomes a devotee of Krishna. Yet those who are after material opulence and material happiness place themselves under the care of the material energy, Mahamaya, or under the care of material demigods, like Lord Shiva and others. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is found that when the gopis of Vrindavan desired Krishna as their husband, they prayed to the spiritual energy, Yogamaya, for the fulfillment of their desire. In the Sapta Shati, it is found that King Surata and a merchant named Samadhi worshipped Mahamaya for material opulence. Thus, one should not mistakenly equalize Yogamaya and Mahamaya. So here not only are we hearing a clear difference in the two functions of Yogamaya and Mahamaya, we're being warned not to consider them as being the same. Have a clear understanding of the difference of the two. Otherwise we'll end up dedicating ourselves to the wrong path in life. So let's hear one more quote from Srila Prabhupada that talks about the distinctions between these two energies. This one is from the Krishna book. The specific words used in Srimad Bhagavatam are Yogamayam Upashritaha, which means that this dancing of the gopis, meaning Krishna's dancing with the gopis in the rasa dance, is on the platform of Yogamaya, not Mahamaya. The dancing of young boys and girls within the material world is in the kingdom of Mahamaya, or the external energy. The rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis is on the platform of Yogamaya. The difference between the platforms of Yogamaya and Mahamaya is compared in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to the difference between gold and iron. From the viewpoint of metallurgy, gold and iron are both metals, but the quality is completely different. So what did we hear in this quote? What was the analogy that Prabhupada used? I literally just said it, but what was the analogy? Gold and iron. Yogamaya is like gold, and Mahamaya is like iron. So my goodness, it seems as though these two energies are like in two completely different corners. They have such opposite purposes and very different identities. So how are we to understand it in today's purport? Prabhupada is saying that Yogamaya also is bewildering the living entities, keeping them in the darkness of ignorance. So this is a little bit confusing. So why don't we continue reading a few more excerpts and see if we can discover some common ground between them. I have a couple.
What is confusing? What do you make?
Well, here in the purport, Prabhupada said that Yogamaya is keeping the living entities in the darkness of ignorance in this material world. But generally, we hear about Yogamaya in relation to the spiritual world, how she's facilitating the Lord's spiritual pastimes. So that's the apparent conflict that we're hoping to get some insight into today. So here is a purport, an excerpt from a purport from the 3rd canto. Srila Prabhupada says, the energy of the Lord called avidya is the bewildering factor of the conditioned souls. The material nature is called avidya, or ignorance. But to the devotees of the Lord, engaged in pure devotional service, this energy becomes vidya, or pure knowledge. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. The energy of the Lord transforms from Mahamaya to Yogamaya, and appears to pure devotees in her real feature. So what did you hear from this excerpt? Would anybody like to share? What was revealed in this quote? What connection between Yogamaya and Mahamaya did we hear?
Transform. This material energy is Avidya Shakti.
And Prabhu said there was a transformation. Who transformed into what?
Information what?
So it said, Prabhupada said, the energy of the Lord transforms from Mahamaya to Yogamaya and appears to pure devotees in her real feature. The real feature, meaning that it seems that Yogamaya is the real feature of Mahamaya. So this is interesting. Let's keep going, let's keep reading. Let's hear another excerpt. This is from the 10th canto, from one of Srila Prabhupada's purports, where he says, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. In the Vedas, it is said that the potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called by different names, such as Yogamaya and Mahamaya. Ultimately, however, the Lord's potency is one. Exactly as electric potency is one, although it can act both to cool and to heat. The Lord's potency acts in both the spiritual and material worlds. In the spiritual world, the Lord's potency works as Yogamaya, and in the material world, the same potency works as Mahamaya, exactly as electricity works in both a heater and a cooler. In the material world, this potency, working as Mahamaya, acts upon the conditioned souls to deprive them more and more of devotional service. When the conditioned soul becomes liberated, however, he thinks of himself as an eternal servant of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnara Nitya Das. When he comes to that position, the same potency, acting as Yogamaya, increasingly helps him become purified and devote his energy to the service of the Lord. So what did you hear in this excerpt? What did Prabhupada reveal about the relationship between Yogamaya and Mahamaya here?
Transform can be transformed into heat and cold.
Yeah.
It depends on the devotion.
Yeah, exactly. Prabhupada gave an amazing metaphor, just as the same electricity, which there's one kind of electricity coming into the building, right? But in the refrigerator, that electricity transforms its energy into cooling, and in the electric heater, it transforms itself into hot energy and warms us. So it seems to me that the living entities in the material world are in the freezer, probably, and the living entities in the spiritual world, they're just being warmed up by the sun of Krishna, whereas in the material world, everybody's cooling off in the fridge.
It's finished now. It's warm.
Yogamaya is increasing. That's good.
What did you say about Yogamaya and Mahamaya? Yogamaya is in the spiritual world, facilitating, arranging Krishna's pastimes, so
Yes.
Krishna can enjoy. And then what role has got Yogamaya in the material world if there is Mahamaya?
Exactly. So that's what we're trying to discover. Why does Yogamaya have a role in the material world if this is Mahamaya's domain and Mahamaya is taking care of it? And actually what we're hearing in this latest excerpt that I just read is that actually ultimately they're one potency. So Yogamaya, Mahamaya, it's one potency of the Lord manifesting in two different ways. So we learn from these explanations by Srila Prabhupada that the identities of Yogamaya and Mahamaya they seem closer than it appeared at first. That in one sense they're the same energy, just performing two different roles. But a question might arise in one's mind, well, if these two Mayas have just been revealed to us by Srila Prabhupada to be the same potency of Krishna, he said one energy, one potency, then why give them two different names and make so much of a distinction between them? And where does Durga come into it? We still haven't understood. Prabhupada equated Durga with Yogamaya in this today's purport. Normally we think of her as being associated with the material world, with Mahamaya. So I just want to read one last excerpt from Srila Prabhupada for today, because as I was searching, I found that this one excerpt is like the perfect synthesis of both what is the difference between the two, what is the sameness between the two, and he also mentions Durga Devi in a way that's going to make things more clear also. So I feel like this is the perfect synthesis and conclusion, this one, to both sides. Difference, sameness, oneness. So let's just hear this last quote from Srila Prabhupada. It's a bit longer than the other one, I admit, so we'll have to work a little bit harder to pay attention. Trust me, it's worth it. So, Srila Prabhupada says, in a purport to the 10th canto, actually the first chapter of the 10th canto, so probably you've heard it, those who have been in class regularly have heard this maybe a couple months ago or so. Prabhupada says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead ordered Yogamaya to bewilder his associates in his pastimes and bewilder demons like Kamsa. To give service to the Lord, Yogamaya appeared along with Mahamaya. Mahamaya refers to Yaya Samohitam Jagat, one who bewilders the entire material world. From this statement, it is to be understood that Yogamaya, in her partial expansion, becomes Mahamaya and bewilders the conditioned soul. In other words, the entire creation has two divisions, transcendental or spiritual and material. Yogamaya manages, I like this word manages, Yogamaya manages the spiritual world, and by her partial expansion, as Mahamaya, she manages the material world. As stated in Narada Pancharatra, Mahamaya is a partial expansion of Yogamaya. The Narada Pancharatra clearly states that the Supreme Personality has one potency, which is sometimes described as Durga. The Brahma Samhita says, Chayeva yasya bhavanani vivarti Durga. Durga is not different from Yogamaya. When one understands Durga properly, he is immediately liberated. For Durga is originally the spiritual potency, Hladini Shakti, by whose mercy one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Hladini Shaktir Asmat, from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 1, verse 5. The Mahamaya Shakti, however, is a covering of Yogamaya, and she is therefore called the covering potency. By this covering potency, the entire material world is bewildered. Yaya samohitam jagat. So there's just one more little part to this quote, but I want to stop and ask you what you heard in this excerpt so far.
It's a partial expansion.
Partial expansion. Yeah, I thought that was a key word, a key term in this one, is that we actually heard Prabhupada use the word partial expansion, that Mahamaya is a partial expansion of Yogamaya. And so in this way you can kind of understand that their identity is one. So Yogamaya is acting herself, but through the agency of her partial expansion. And we also heard that Durga is actually also a name for that original spiritual potency that actually Durga originally is the Lord's spiritual potency, and in the material world, again, there's a partial expansion. So let's go ahead and hear the last part. Prabhupada says, in conclusion, bewildering the conditioned souls and liberating the devotees are both functions belonging to Yogamaya. So bewildering the conditioned souls and liberating the devotees are both functions belonging to Yogamaya. They're both Yogamaya's functions, actually. Transferring the pregnancy of Devaki and keeping Mother Yashoda in deep sleep were both done by Yogamaya. Mahamaya cannot act upon such devotees, for they are always liberated. So Mahamaya couldn't act on Yashoda Mai in any way, because she's an always liberated devotee. But although it is not possible for Mahamaya to control liberated souls, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she did bewilder Kamsa. She did bewilder Kamsa. The action of Yogamaya in presenting herself before Kamsa was the action of Mahamaya. So we hear, this is interesting language. Yogamaya presented herself before Kamsa, but it was actually the action of Mahamaya when she did that, not Yogamaya. So Yogamaya, Prabhupada says, Yogamaya cannot even see or touch such polluted persons as Kamsa. In Chandi, in the Markandeya Purana, 11th chapter, Mahamaya says, during the 28th Yuga, in the period of Vaivasvata Manu, I shall take birth as the daughter of Yashoda and be known as Vindhyachala Vasi. So I feel like we got the final, full detailed conclusion here in this excerpt from Srila Prabhupada, that actually it's all Yogamaya acting, whether in the spiritual world, in the material world. But when she acts in her capacity of liberating the devotees or facilitating the devotees' relationship with Krishna, then she's acting in her original feature, as we heard Prabhupada use earlier, her original feature. And when she's acting to bewilder a materialistic person, such as Kamsa, who can be representative of so many conditioned souls in this material world, Prabhupada says Yogamaya cannot actually even see or touch them. They're so polluted. But still she does approach them, but in her aspect as Mahamaya, her partial expansion as Mahamaya. So in one sense, it's appropriate to say that Yogamaya is both liberating the devotees and bewildering the non-devotees. But when we get a little bit more technical, we understand she expands and approaches them in a different feature when they're conditioned souls, and approaches them in their original feature when they're devotees, liberated devotees.
He says Prabhupada gave different examples, but for me it's still little confusion. What is the conclusion? The conclusion is Mahamaya, Yogamaya, one energy, you work in different way.
Yes.
That's the conclusion?
Yes, just like the electricity being converted to either cooling or heating. So Yogamaya and Mahamaya, they're both features of Yogamaya. And according to who, as Prabhu said, according to who they're approaching, whether it's a devotee or a conditioned soul or a demon, then she'll relate with them in her aspect as Mahamaya, her partial expansion, or in her aspect as Yogamaya, which is really her original feature in that sense. So, yes, it's just like electricity. Same energy interacting in two different ways.
But through a partial expansion.
And through a partial expansion as Mahamaya, it's always through a partial expansion.
Which is very interesting because, as we know, Vishnu, Krishna, they have no connection with material energy. And so the expansions deal with material energy. So here, Lord Shiva or Sada Shiva has been given the empowerment to connect with material energy, Durga. Right? So therefore, that's also an expansion in that job, as it were, like that empowerment to deal with material world.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think I'll come back to to you, Sibyl, in a moment. I think that's a perfect explanation because we're already a little bit familiar with the kind of apparently confusing nature of Lord Shiva, as he's not a condition, so he's not a jiva, but he's not Vishnu. He's sort of like a partial expansion, but he's not quite Vishnu. He's like yogurt, whereas Vishnu is milk. And once you transform milk into yogurt, it's different, even though the constituent ingredients are essentially the same. It's different. And so Lord Shiva can be said to be an expansion of Vishnu, and in one sense not, it's a little different, but so in that sense he's like a partial expansion. And
Isso da filosofia tinta Beda Beda Tattva?
yeah, exactly. So just as Lord Shiva is like that partial expansion of Vishnu, so Mahamaya is like that partial expansion of Yogamaya, because Yogamaya, Prabhupada said, can't even see or touch any demon like that, it's so polluted. Just like Vishnu doesn't directly come in contact with the material energy, but through this intermediary of his partial expansion of Shiva, he interacts. So Yogamaya, she doesn't come directly in contact with the, demoniac consciousness and all the various bewilderment of this material world, but through her intermediary, this Mahamaya, partial expansion, then she's approaching, she's interacting.
And then she gets a different name.
And then she gets a different name, otherwise we'd be confused.
Mahamaya allows herself to be somewhat handled by demoniac energies.
Right.
Prabhu, I understand,
I want to speak.
Okay, go ahead, Sibyl. She raised her hand a little bit earlier. So.
Because what I understand of what you say, for me, it's like I don't know if you know about this concept, but the Japanese concept of yin and yang. For me, it's really the same thing. Because when you are speaking of expansion, that's a yin concept, and the other it's a yang concept. For me, it's like, I don't know if you know a little bit about yin and yang, but it's really remember me the same way of fonctionnement, because yin doesn't go without yang. The all are just one, and that cannot exist the one without another. So for me, it's a shame that we don't have a Japanese specialist in yin and yang here, because we probably can have a good conversation with him, because for me that's really what it sounds to, really relative. I'm not able to explain more because I speak English very well, and I'm not a real specialist of the yin and yang.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. I don't know. I also don't know much about yin and yang, so I can't really comment on whether there
Mas o
is.
Shastra fala yin,
isn't a
yang
parable.
é Vasu Shastra, né?
Shantatma knows
Yeah.
Mahamaya,
Yeah.
Yogamaya very well. That's good enough. You don't want to learn ultimately, I'm nothing.
Okay, so I just wanted to say one last thing before I open up for questions. It's just a quick thing. So I wanted to really come now to the heart of the matter, because this is all very interesting, especially it's intellectually stimulating what we've been talking about and hearing, but what is really the heart of the matter that maybe is really makes it relevant to our day-to-day life. And I see that as being, why do we need to know about both the difference of these material and spiritual energies, as well as how the material and spiritual energies are ultimately, as Krishna says, Daivihesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. He's speaking about the material energy, bewildering the conditioned souls, very difficult to overcome for the conditioned souls, but he's saying this is my divine energy. So why is it important in our actual personal everyday lives, both for devotees and for the general public to learn this? So that difference is so important, to understand that there's a difference between the material and spiritual energy, between Yoga Maya, whether we're being dealt with by, or under the protection, as Prabhupada said, of Yoga Maya, or under the quote-unquote protection of Mahamaya, is that if we don't have a clear understanding of this difference, then we might sort of think that kind of everything's just spiritual. There's a tendency that when somebody starts to take an interest in a spiritual path or starts taking interest in spirituality, that they don't have a very clear conception of the dangers, for example, of interacting with the material energy. And they may just feel like, well, as long as I just kind of approach something with spiritual vibes, then it's all nice, it's all spiritual, you know, and I don't necessarily have to give up, for example, intoxication. I might think, actually, this is giving me a connection with spiritual energy. And I might think that, well, you know, if I just cultivate a spiritual heart, then even my sexual exchanges, they'll be spiritual. No, trust me, it's a spiritual relationship, you know. And this is actually, it's really common, because people tend to, when they become interested in spirituality, they tend to express the opinion that I'm not interested in religion, but I'm interested in spirituality. And one of the challenges of that is that actually the religion side tends to, well, I guess it's not really so much to do with religion. It's more just a clear philosophical understanding. But anyways, they tend to lack this understanding that this material world is, I'm under illusion in this material world. I'm identifying with a material body, which is not me. And I'm thinking that by just, if I can bring some very pleasing sense objects in contact with my body, I'll be really happy. And they may go on in that consciousness, feeling like, yes, I'm becoming spiritual, I'm having a spiritual awakening, and I'm really blossoming. And so it's really important to hear from the Bhagavad Gita and understand Krishna saying, like, these are two very different energies. The conditioned souls in the material world are bound by this material energy. It's chaining them, it's keeping them, it's preventing them from actually attaining their real spiritual position, and actually it's keeping them miserable also. Dukhalayam shashvatam. We're actually suffering a lot in this material world, and there's actually no hope of finding genuine love or happiness in the material world. And without that clear understanding, one will actually remain, they'll just remain within the mire of the material world, whereas thinking, no, it's okay, what I'm doing is spiritual. And on the other hand, why is it important to understand that ultimately these two energies, although performing very different functions, and we must know that difference, it's ultimately the same, Daivihesha Gunamai, the same spiritual energy of Krishna. It's not that this energy is some kind of rival to Krishna, that there's just like this big duality between good and evil, you know, God and Satan and their rivals, and actually that even this energy is ultimately coming from Krishna, and this energy is a servant of Krishna. And so actually it's not that this energy which is keeping us bound has some genuinely evil kind of intention with us, but it's a service that Maya Devi is performing to facilitate the illusions of the conditioned souls, because they've decided that they don't want to acknowledge their relationship of dependence on Krishna, and Krishna never forces anybody to be actively in a loving relationship with him, because that's not really love, that's not really a loving relationship. So although he doesn't really want to facilitate the living entities being in ignorance, being illusion, being separated from him, he does so because he doesn't force them. And although he's facilitating that here, he actually has his real mission is to somehow reclaim all these conditioned souls. So in a sense, he's kind of booby-trapped the whole material world. He's rigged it in such a way that the living entities can come to a reawakening at every moment he's trying to reawaken them to their real nature. And even through this process of karma, this sort of universal law of justice, he's trying to give the living entities a reaction for each action that they do in the material world that is kind of going to act, to help wake them up, a harsh reaction for the sinful activities that they perform, to try and wake them up to their original spiritual nature. And so it's important to understand that everything actually that's going on is Krishna's mercy, ultimately. So my final statement before taking questions is, there's one little excerpt that I didn't write down here, but Prabhupada is talking about how the impersonalists or Mayavadis, they tend to accept Brahman and reject Maya. Brahma Satya Jagan Mitya. They say we have to do away with this Maya. Because Maya means illusion. And Prabhupada says, one thing that the Mayavadis don't know is that another meaning of the word Maya is mercy. And so, actually everything that happens to us in any condition of life is ultimately coming from a benevolent, well-wishing Supreme Friend, Krishna, and it's mercy. It's even a materially very harsh situation, there's a merciful lesson in that, a merciful wake-up alarm, that if we can just tune in to the mercy of Krishna, we can benefit from absolutely any circumstance in our life. There's not ultimately any good or bad circumstances, because all circumstances are coming from Krishna's mercy, and we can benefit if we can just tune our consciousness to the vibration of the Bhagavad Gita and see the world through Bhagavad Gita's lenses. Then we can see anything and everything. We can understand how it's Krishna's mercy, or at least get a beginning understanding, and we can benefit from that. See Krishna's hand in it. Okay. Thank you for all.
For me, it sounds like he's trying to inspire us to undertake a little bit more than we want to go more in the direction of yoga.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the whole material world is designed like that. The Vedas say that they give the example of the sea. Would anybody like to go, what if I gave you a task? Go to the sea, I would like you to go to the sea, and just one simple thing, a simple counting game, just count how many waves there are coming in. Would you like to take up that task? Do you think it'd be an easy task? Who would like to go? Like, yeah, no problem, I'll be finished in a few seconds. Actually, there's so many waves coming in the ocean, on the sea, and in the Vedas it's stated that the Lord is so eager to deliver the conditioned souls in this material world that he is sending avatars as a means to reach conditioned souls and elevate them back to their original spiritual consciousness. And the Vedas say that these avatars that the Lord is sending, they are more numerous than the waves in the ocean. So that's practically Krishna's really only project with this material world. Although the secondary mission is to facilitate the conditioned souls, to kind of in their game to compete with Krishna and try to become great controllers and enjoyers. He's facilitating that, but that's not his real mission here. His heart's mission is just, he's so eager to reclaim the conditioned souls. Prabhupada says, even though we're now in the stage of being practicing devotees, we're aiming towards that goal. Prabhupada says, Krishna is so much more eager to get you back than you are, to get back to him. So, yes, astutely noted that he definitely wants us to come a lot more towards Yogamaya than Mahamaya. Thank you. Okay, maybe Madhavendra Puri Prabhu can be the last statement.
Thank you, Prabhu. It was a nice class. As we know, we have to see things in terms of Achintya Beda Bed, Tattva. And Sri Hadi, in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.237, explains that the onus is always on the jiva. And he speaks to King Muni. Bhayam Ditya Bini Vishitatasya Ishadapatasya Vipajya Smritihi. He explains that as soon as you absorb yourself in something which is seemingly different from Krishna, you fall into Maya. So the onus is entirely on us. As soon as you absorb yourself in something which is seemingly different from Krishna, abhinivishitatasya, it reverses your proclivity to be a servant of God. You become competitor of God. So, like you said, it's only one energy according to how we position ourselves. Are we absorbing ourselves in something which is separated, different from Krishna, which is not possible because everything is Krishna. But we tend to believe we can absorb ourselves in something which is seemingly different from Krishna, and that will trigger Mahamaya. Because actually everything is coming from Subhadra, the internal energy. She's the younger sister of Krishna. But if you don't want Krishna, then she's going to transform into God. So. But the onus is on us. This is the point of Shri Hari to King Lili.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think that's the perfect closing remark, because that's really the heart of the matter. Is the onus is on us. Krishna is only interacting with us from this energy or that energy based on our consciousness and what we're getting ourselves mixed up in, or what we're, So, thank you.
The energy is actually Radharani, ultimately. The energy is actually Radharani,
Ultimately, Srimati Radharani.
I think I remember reading a story. Somebody asked, "What is Maya? Can you show me Maya? What is Maya?" So this guy, he was holding onto a tree. He was saying, "Let me go, let me go, let me go. This is Maya." I don't know if you've heard that.
I have heard that.
So this is Maya. You hold on to Maya, you don't want to let go, and you become worthy.
Thank you very much, Prabhus and Matajis. So, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Shantatma Prabhu ki